He's from Gitmo to a prison in Illinois is drawing a whole lot of sharp criticism. He's ordered, as you may know, the prison at Guantanamo Bay in Cuba shut down, and this new plan calls for holding some military tribunals at the prison in Thompson, Illinois. Some detainees could be held indefinitely. Let's get to Republican Senator Lindsey Graham of South Carolina. He's a member of both the Judiciary and Homeland Security Committees, also a military lawyer. Senator, good to see you this morning.
Good to be with you.
A lot of your Republican colleagues are against this plan altogether, saying these guys should not be on U.S. soil. Where do you fall?
I don't mind closing Gitmo if you did it right. The problem I've got with the disposition of these prisoners is that they're going to civilian court. Some of them are, and we're criminalizing the war. We had 400,000 German prisoners on U.S. soil during World War II. We can safely house these al-Qaeda prisoners, but they should not be going into federal civilian court. No German or Japanese prisoner ever went to federal court. They should be tried by military commissions. Once you put them into civilian court, you change the rules of the war in a very detrimental way.
You know, bottom line, what your colleagues are saying in their criticism too is this: the question they're asking is, in what way does this make us safer? Let's start there, and then we're going to move to the tribunal issue. Does this make us safer to have them here?
If you close Gitmo, it would make the war effort more successful because it's used by our enemies to recruit and to basically propaganda tool of enemy forces, according to Petraeus and General McChrystal and others. However, if you're going to close Gitmo and bring them to the United States and give them the same constitutional rights as an American citizen, then you've undermined the war effort and you made us less safe, because if we capture someone in the future in Afghanistan, under domestic criminal law, you have to read them their Miranda warnings. Under military law, you can gather intelligence and question them without worrying about the case. At the point of capture, the commander doesn't know what rules are going to apply, so we confused our commanders, and we've given these terrorists access to civilian courts in a way that will undermine our national intelligence gathering capability, in my view.
You know, it's being criticized, as I said, from the right, also though from the left. This is what Amnesty International has had to say. All President Obama is doing is changing the zip code of Guantanamo Bay. They have a lot of concerns about these detainees being held there indefinitely, never ending up at trial.
Well, under the law of armed conflict, and I've been a military lawyer for 25 years, there is no requirement to release an enemy prisoner at a date certain. That would be absurd. No one suggested in World War II that at a point in time you released every German and Japanese prisoners. These people have been determined to be enemy combatants, warriors against our nation, not common criminals, and under the law of armed conflict, they can be held indefinitely, and some of these people will die in jail without ever having a trial, and that's okay with me because they represent military threats. They deserve due process when it comes to determining whether or not they're an enemy combatant. That's an administrative hearing, not a criminal trial, and under the law of armed conflict, you do not have to let an enemy prisoner go, and it would be a huge mistake. About 20% of the ones being released already have gone back to the fight. There's some there that it would be foolish to let go, and I hope the president will never allow that to happen. He has legal standing to keep them in prison under the law of armed conflict, but when you take them into civilian court, you have to try people or let them go because of the speedy trial clock. That's why you don't want to put people in civilian court.
Obviously, when we're talking about civilian court, the most notable example, our first example, is Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and his alleged cohorts there planning 9/11 in civilian court. What would satisfy you? Would it satisfy you, though, if going forward they were all put into military tribunals on U.S. soil?
What would satisfy me is to bring them back to the United States and use the law of armed conflict consistently throughout the process. Have a tribunal that determines whether or not they're an enemy combatant, allow a federal judge to look at the military's work product to bless their finding. Then any trials would go into military commissions. Any enemy combatant suspected of being a war criminal tried in a criminal setting would be tried by our military to protect classified evidence. It's a system that understands we're at war. Civilian courts have never been set up to deal with war crimes. That's what I would do. I would use the law of armed conflict, and also would have a preventive detention model that will allow people to be held off the battlefield indefinitely without trial, because you can do that under the law of armed conflict.
Senator Lindsey Graham, Republican of South Carolina. Senator, thanks for your time.
Thank you.
John?
Iran flexes its military muscle again, testing what looks like its most